It may have seemed like God's kingdom was coming to earth, but not for long. Christianity's growth from a small, persecuted sect to the dominant religion of empire was a violent and bloody one. Even before Constantine died, fine points of Christian doctrine about the Holy Trinity were generating furious debate, and before long, bloodshed. In 366, a conference of bishops left 137 corpses on the floor of a Roman basilica. By the end of the century, there were over 60 official decrees outlawing different heretical beliefs. Before long, there were attempts to ban all non-Christians from public office. Synagogues were burnt. Pagans observed the growth of Christianity with alarm. Their Rome had been ruthless in punishing people's actions, but unconcerned about their beliefs. That sort of tolerance was now a thing of the past.
Have a care. Even wild beasts are not as ferocious as these Christians in their hatred of one another. Ammianus.
Romans had always reveled in grandiose displays of wealth and power. They had inherited from the Greeks and Etruscans a love of the human body and its appetites. In Rome, before Constantine, if you had it, you flaunted it. To the pagans who refused to convert, Christian self-denial was bizarre and puzzling. Despite the rigors of Christianity, as the 4th century progressed, Romans flocked to it. Women, long oppressed by patriarchal Rome, found respect and recognition. To everybody, men and women, rich and poor, Roman and non-Roman, Christianity offered a refuge from the chronic uncertainties of the era.
There's no doubt in my mind that Christianity saved the Roman Empire. At the end of the 3rd century, it gave it a new focus for unity, both religiously and ideologically. But Christianity is the glue that sticks the various parts of the Roman Empire together in the centuries after Constantine.
Christianity could hold the empire together for a while, but not forever. Rome could no longer rule by military might alone. She would have to negotiate with the barbarians. The truth was there were already as many Germanic tribespeople within the ranks of the Roman legions as opposing them. But now they wanted more. If they were good enough to fight Rome's wars, they deserved to share its power. But Romans didn't share power.
As beasts from men, as the dumb from those who speak, so the foolish heathen differs from the Roman.
For centuries, barbarians had been humiliated and enslaved. They were tired of it. When Alaric, leader of the Goths, settled his people inside the northern frontier, he wanted a dignified coexistence with Rome. Alaric spoke Latin fluently, was well-read, and not about to be dismissed by pompous Romans.
We tend to think of the barbarians as a collection of Conan the Barbarian and his buddies coming across the frontier waving their double-handed axes. This is quite far from the truth. By the time the barbarians come across the frontiers, they're beginning to be Romanized. Alaric, who sacked Rome in 410, did so because he was turned down for a job as a Roman general. What these people wanted first and foremost was a place within the empire for themselves, and when they didn't get it, they turned on the government of the emperors.
But Rome had still not learned its lesson. Instead of building diplomatic relations with the Goths, local governors systematically insulted, starved, and overtaxed them. Alaric sent letters of protest to the emperor. They were ignored. When Alaric and his people finally descended on Rome in 410 AD, It was not to rape and pillage, but to drive home his people's protests and demand the decent treatment they'd been promised. To his surprise, as his armies swept through the heart of the empire, there was hardly a Roman soldier in sight. The truth was, many Romans were no longer prepared to fight the barbarians. Some even welcomed them.
I tell you that the poor have been so robbed and downtrodden that many of them seek refuge with the enemy. They seek among the barbarians a Roman mercy because they cannot endure the barbarous mercilessness they find among the Romans. Salvian.
Rome held back, procrastinated, and in the end, Alaric lost patience. Barbarian slaves, delighted by the prospect of Rome's ruin, threw open the city gates. The Goths poured in and sacked the city. Proud Rome was finally brought to her knees. Rome was now divided in half. The Eastern Empire remained strong, but as barbarians overran the West, Romans everywhere were terrified the end was at hand. But apocalyptic visions turned out to be untrue. Not only did the world not end, the barbarians didn't do much raping and plundering either. Goths, Visigoths, Vandals, and other German tribes streamed out of Central Europe and spread themselves throughout the Western Mediterranean.
There's no doubt that the Mediterranean was seen by much of the rest of the world as a sort of El Dorado, as California. It's where you want to be. There was the good life. It's very wrong to think that the German tribes that were trying to invade the Roman Empire and who eventually bring about its collapse in the West were seeking to destroy it. They weren't. They wanted their piece of the action. They wanted to be part of it. They wanted to be part of this great world. And when they take over in the West, they behave like mini Roman emperors, great Roman senators, because this is the good life.
Alaric's sack of Rome in 410 AD was not the end. The Eastern Empire was still strong. From its wealthy cities in Turkey and the Middle East, it viewed the disintegration of the West with growing detachment. It would slowly become the Byzantine Empire, but go on calling itself Roman until the Middle Ages. The Western Empire staggered on for another 60 years. There were still emperors in Rome, but their control was evaporating as the power of the central bureaucracy crumbled. The Western Empire now did nothing for the provinces except tax them. Local Roman nobles soon felt they were better off without it. They came to see themselves as free agents, fortifying their estates, making their own deals with the barbarians, even intermarrying with them. This was the birth of medieval Europe, an anarchic world where local barons owed allegiance to few and built their own fiefdoms. Everywhere, people were turning their backs on Rome. In 476, a Gothic commander quietly told the last Roman emperor of the West he was out of a job. The emperor withdrew to his villa by the sea. Nobody cared or even noticed.
The achievement of the Roman Empire is extraordinarily impressive. Conquest, commitment to discipline, to winning, to victory, to war. And in the history of the human race, the creation of large empires has been fundamentally important, even though it's no longer fashionable. The creation of peace, the creation of law, order, the institutions of Senate, the creation of money, democracy, elections, voting, all these, even if some of them are only the perpetuation of the Greek tradition, have been fundamental in modern European culture.
When the founding fathers of the United States sought a model for their new country, it was to Rome they turned. Raised Raised on the classics, they poured Rome's republican ideals into the Constitution.